welcome to the final session in our Trellis Seminar Series 2022. It's been quite a week. We've had international, we've had people from across the world join us, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So we're delighted to be welcoming someone from the northeast of Scotland this afternoon, and I'll tell you a bit about her and the project in a moment. But for those of you who don't know us, Trellis is the charity that supports therapeutic gardening in Scotland. We provide information, training and good practice sharing, and we aim to promote the highest quality of therapeutic gardening services and enable everyone to get the best out of them. Trellis encourages gardening groups to share their experiences, skills and resources through a network of over 480 gardening groups. For links to all our information and resources online, find them online from the Trellis homepage. So a quick summary of the session this afternoon. There's going to be a presentation of approximately 50 minutes, and that's going to be followed by an opportunity to ask questions and have discussion. So please use the chat function to ask questions throughout the session, and then we'll voice them to the presenter in the Q&A. You can also use your reactions button at the bottom of the screen to raise your hand during the discussion, and we'll ask you to unmute and make your contribution or ask your question then. We've got closed captions or live audio transcription available. You can turn that on. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a box with CC in it. Click on that to enable your live transcription or show subtitles. If you don't see the CC box, try the 3 dots that says more at the bottom of your screen, and you should be able to enable the transcriptions from there. We're going to ask for some feedback near the end of the session. We're going to invite you to complete our survey through a link in the chat. It's very important to us. It informs our work and it tailors what we can provide to you. So it would be lovely to get your feedback on this session. If you missed the link in the chat, we're sending out follow-up emails to each of these sessions, and there'll be a link there to do it. So that's all the housekeeping, and I'm going to say it's a real pleasure and a privilege to welcome our speaker today, Anne McAlister. Anne is going to share the story of the Alcohol and Drugs Action Recovery Garden, and that's in Aberdeen. And the title is called Growing Recovery: The Story of Enthusiastic Volunteers, a Large Polytunnel and Courgette Cake. So we're looking forward to that. Anne was brought up in Belfast and came to Aberdeen for love almost 30 years ago, when she joined her husband, who had been at university there. She worked for many years in the public sector and then decided that she wanted a complete change, and so she moved to the third sector and has now been working with Ada for over 8 years. There she creates opportunities for volunteers within the charity, and that's where people live, where people with lived experience of alcohol and drug dependency support clients and staff. The Ada Gardening Group started in 2015 and has grown from strength to strength. Anne professes to not being a gardener herself, but a plant killer. But as we all know, that's the sure sign of a gardener in the making. Anne, can I ask you to unmute, and I'll pass over to you.
Thank you very much, Jenny, for that lovely introduction. Yes, you're right. I can usually maintain a nice vase of cut flowers, but that's about it. My plant skills are not great. I'm going to share my presentation with you, so if you just give me a second. Make sure I've got all the right bits done.
Thank you, that's lovely.
You can see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, well, welcome to sunny, well, it was a sunny a minute ago, Aberdeen, and to the story of Alcohol and Drugs Action Recovery Garden Project. Alcohol and Drugs Action is a charity working in Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, providing advice, information, targeted interventions on all alcohol and drugs related issues. We've experienced professional staff who support our individuals, families, friends, and the wider community by providing services targeted at harm reduction, and that's right from the early stages of people coming to what we call our needle exchange, which is in the city centre, where they can get equipment for continuing to use drugs. And some people are a wee bit hesitant about that and have mixed views about it, but it's harm reduction, it's preventing infection, and can ultimately reduce the dependency and also the use of NHS facilities. So the initial interventions is a very important, harm reduction interventions, very important aspect of our work. Provides to helping people stabilize their lives, support them in what they want to do, and progress on then into their recovery. The work is supported by volunteers, as Jenny said, who run most of our therapeutic groups, and that includes craft, art, and gardening. Now, why did that not move anywhere? See,
Click on the, move your cursor over to the right hand side of the screen, click on it, and then your buttons might start working.
Okay. Thank you, whoever that was. Thank you very much. Okay, the growing recovery, the story of enthusiastic volunteers, a large polytunnel, and courgette cake. Jenny said the project started in 2015 when we were approached by Aberdeen City Council with the offer of the use of a polytunnel at the council nursery up at Hazelhead. And what had happened was the council were no longer growing most of their own flowers and so on for the city. They were bringing them in, so they had a lot of empty tunnels, and they wanted to start a community initiative to get community projects involved in gardening, and they were offering the polytunnels for that use. A lot has happened in those intervening years, and that's what I'm here to tell you about today. Initially, we recruited 2 volunteers who started the project. They both moved on to other things, jobs, and one job with ourselves and another with job with another third sector organisation. So we now have 3 volunteers who run the group, and we have an average of between 6 and 8 clients who attend on a regular basis. Occasionally we'll have, sometimes in the summertime you'll have a few more, but there's a good core that come regularly. And in this slide you can see our polytunnel as it was just at the end of last year. That was just as we were finishing the year. Some of the plants and so on that we had ready for, we had a plant sale in September, it was. And that was us. And you can see the length of it. It's a full-size polytunnel. Initially we only said we could use half of it, but the project has progressed, so we use the whole polytunnel now. And you'll see on this side there the famous courgette cake, and that is Judith, our lead volunteer, who's a very experienced gardener, and she has become famous for, she always brings something nice for the morning coffee. She's a great baker as well. And the courgette cake came about because as a lot of you will know, you plant things, you never know what's going to happen. And we had a glut of courgettes, and Judith was like, what am I going to do with all these courgettes? So she found a recipe and baked a cake, and it became very popular. And even was asked for when Britain in Bloom a couple of years ago came, and the judges were coming to the adjacent polytunnel to have their lunch up at the site. And Mike, the site, the man in charge of the site, said, "Which any chance that Judith could produce her courgette cake?" So I'm convinced that's what won us. I think we won a medal that year in Britain in Bloom, and it must have been all down to Judith's courgette cake. So We have all been affected by lockdown in the past couple of years, but the council allowed the volunteers and some selected group members to continue to attend the gardening and the project, and adhering to strict guidelines. They kept the project going. Because it was outdoors as well, it was one of the first opportunities that we were able to offer to our clients again following lockdown, as restrictions eased. Even sort of in the quite very strict time of lockdown, we were still able to have clients and volunteers, as long as, you know, they kept to the guidelines. And I have to say on this is one of the things where, as a group and as myself as the sort of manager of the group, we are very appreciative to Trellis for the amount of great information they were able to provide about lockdown gardening, how to run groups during lockdown, and the risk assessments and all those sorts of paperworky type things that you need to have, but it can be quite stressful finding them. So I certainly appreciated the help from Jenny and Trellis that they were able to give us, and that's one of the benefits, I think, of belonging to such an organisation as Trellis. The group are very interested in maintaining bee-friendly habitats, as we work closely with the Aberdeen Urban Bee Project. And some of our clients have moved on from the gardening to become, to do their training, to look after the bees and support the Urban Bee Project. So we're very, very into our bees at ADA, and it's our aim to not use any artificial pesticides, try and maintain all organic growing for all our produce. And again, that's also for the benefit of the bees and other insects that contribute to pollinating and looking after, making sure that we look after things naturally. It does have its downsides from time to time when you can't deter certain beasties and pests, but we learn, the volunteers and the clients have certainly been great at trying to learn new ways of managing things, so that we don't have to use anything that's not natural. At the start of the growing season, the volunteers meet with whatever clients are there at the time and agree what we want to grow. We've tried everything from sweet corn to chilies. Over the years, we've tried most things, some more successfully than others. Sweet corn has been lovely. A couple of years, one year, the mice completely destroyed it. If we plant anything outside in our cold frames, we have to be very careful to cover it with mesh, fine mesh, because the deer come in from Hazelhead Park and they'll just eat everything. And they don't seem to have any dietary requirements of any sort. They'll just eat whatever they can get at. So that was something else we learnt to our cost one year. As you can see, we've grown potatoes on a number of occasions. We work in conjunction with another Aberdeen charity called One Seed Forward, and they provide us with our seed potatoes. So it's a collaboration for the growing of our potatoes. And obviously then if we have excess, the person that runs One Seed Forward, Bob, he can sometimes comes and he'll take away extra potatoes to sell at one of the market garden stalls. So it's a project that covers, and crosses over lots of different areas. Quite often in the winter time, January usually, when we're not at the polytunnel, but we usually try and meet somewhere else, we'll help One Seed Forward by making up their packs of seeds. We'll sit around a big table and make up wee packs of seeds that then One Seed Forward will then use when they go in and do their work in schools and giving out community projects. So it's a great crossover world when it comes to the providing of produce and also the initial seeds and so on to make the things with. You can see one of our nice sunflowers in the middle there. One of the first things we did, I think it was in 2016, I think it maybe was. We had a sunflower challenge growing competition, and we also were able to raise some funds for the gardening project by doing it. And what we did was we sold seeds, and each person that bought it, they wrote their name on a lollipop stick, and that's what you got. You know, when you paid your £1, you got your lollipop stick with your name on it, and then the seeds were all planted, and it just, some grew, some didn't, and it was just the luck of the draw. But it was a great fun. People, we kept people posted on Facebook, a running update every so often of the heights and who was winning and who was taking over and so on, and that it created a lot of interest, as well as raising some funds. Our volunteers are trained. They're trained initially with ADA, because we have quite a strict training program, but we have quite a thorough training program for our volunteers, because obviously they're dealing with very vulnerable people, and they need to have a little insight into how to handle people with substance misuse issues, and also how to manage groups and dealing with possible difficult situations that may arise. And as well as that, the gardening volunteers have now been trained in the trellis. They've been doing their trellis training and the 4 modules that trellis offer over the year. And Judith and Helen have certainly benefited from that and find it very useful in planning and thinking about how we take the existing project forward. As you know, it's divided into 4 seasons, and it covers all areas of learning from running therapeutic garden, and includes ideas for alternative ways of learning about the outdoors. And you can see there we did some painted stones, and they also did some collage work with foraging. And although I think the clients were a bit skeptical initially, because it was Judith and Helen, and because they were doing their training, they said that they would be happy enough to do it. And when they got into it, they actually really enjoyed it. As you can see, that's Judith and Helen with their certificates for one of the modules that they did. We've taken on board another lady called Fiona, and she's hoping to start our trellis course in the next quarter. In 2021, we started a mini orchard, and it was interesting. Just before we all joined together, I was hearing that we had one apple tree way back many years ago, when some of you may have been in Aberdeen for a trellis AGM, which was held at the polytunnels, and we had, I've forgotten his name. That's gone out of my head. Anyway, someone came along.
Jim McCall.
Jim McCall, thank you very much. I wanted to call him Bob for some reason. I knew that wasn't right. Jim McCall was there, attended that trellis conference, and he came next door into our polytunnel and gave great advice to the people that were there that day about this one little apple tree that we had. And it gave a good crop that year, funnily enough, which we weren't expecting, and I put that down to Jim's good advice. And since then, we've decided that we would create a mini orchard just towards the back of the polytunnels. So you can see the fencing there at the back of the area. And we have those little trees, and we hope this year that we'll get a good crop from them. Obviously, there was nothing last year, because this was just them more or less at the time of middle of the summer. So they were just starting off, and you see we had to put the wire caging around them to stop the deer chopping their heads off. But we hope that this year we'll get a good crop from them. It's always something different and something new for our clients to learn about and learn how to look after, which is good as well. We are self-sufficient as far as our group is concerned. The charity, ADA as a charity, are contracted to run specific services through Aberdeen Health and Social Care Partnership, but all the therapeutic work and the volunteering work we have to fundraise for. So you can see there on one of the slides, we have our annual plant sale, and sometimes it's in June, sometimes it's the end of August, beginning of September. And also we like to support other events such as Mental Health Awareness Week. And last year they did a joint project at the Grove with Green and Bee, One Seed Forward, the Foyer, Healthy Minds, and they just, I think they just opened their doors one on the day and encouraged people to come along and see how gardening could help as a therapeutic way of being mindful, keeping healthy, and obviously then encouraging people to see which group they may like to join or participate with. We're also part of It's Your Neighbourhood, and which is part of working with Keep Scotland Beautiful. And over the years, we've done various things. You see there two of our volunteers, two of our clients who are helping with putting out pots with flowers and herbs in them. And that is in the Castlegate area of Aberdeen. And this was part of an initiative to brighten up the city and ask various businesses and organisations if they would look after a pot. And what we did for a number of years, well, 2 or 3 years I think it was, gave them replaced the pots seasonally. And so they got one in the springtime which had bulbs and daffodils and things in it, and then it would be, as soon as they died off, it would be taken away and it would be replaced with summer flowers of some description. And then as the summer ended, there was usually something that would hopefully see the winter through as well, if the pots managed to remain in place. And we were, I mean, I think we were very lucky. I think we did have a couple of pots that were stolen. Funnily enough, none were vandalised, just went missing. So obviously people liked them rather than wanted to vandalise them, so took them away. So I hope they took them away and looked after them, that's all I can say. In the middle there, you'll see if, as part of It's Your Neighbourhood, Aberdeen is entered, as I said, in Britain in Bloom. So when it comes to the Britain in Bloom Judging Day, the community groups that participate are asked to make a little display where the judges usually come and visit first. It's usually in the Duthie Park, and they walk around and see the different participants, the different groups that are participating and what they're doing, and chat to usually whoever's there before they go off around the city and visit some of the actual projects themselves. And we're very lucky, we've managed to get, our gardening group has managed to a level 5, an outstanding, and a certificate of distinction. That was last year, and the year before lockdown we also had a level 5. So we've achieved a lot for such a small group. I would say we've achieved an awful lot. And awards are nice to be able to display in our office, where we can, it encourages people. We obviously put things on Facebook and online, and it shows that we have community involvement as well as just the project itself. I think it widens people's interest, and it widens our clients' participation in other things, not just turning up once a week to the polytunnel. One of the things that we also have, which came about in, I think it was 2016, was we took over the running and the maintenance of a planter in Carmelite Street. The Carmelite Street is right in the city centre. It takes you from not far from Union Street down towards the station, and there are a couple of planters in it. And we asked the council if we could have one, because it's also just round the corner from our offices. And we wanted somewhere where people could not necessarily go to, but walk past and reflect on people who had lost their lives to addiction. So we called it Lives Worth Remembering, a place to reflect on those lost too early through addiction. And our gardening group, this is one of our volunteers, maintain it, look after it. There's a nice little tree in it. We did have initially some vandalism when we took it over at first. The tree was pulled up, but we managed to replant it, and it didn't suffer too badly from its shock, and it recovered well. Some of the plants have been pulled up. We're not sure whether the plants that were pulled up were done by people or by animals. We suspect that some of it was possibly animals, and as you'll know, some of you may know that we do have a rather unfortunate seagull population in Aberdeen, and they seem to like to pull anything out that they can get their beaks on. But we're looking at replanting it this year with more sustainable, I suppose you would call it, plants, such as lavender. And I can't remember the name of the other one, but it was something that was on an It's Your Neighbourhood event recently. And it was a suggestion that someone made, because we don't have necessarily the facilities to water it greatly. So we need plants that are in it that don't need a lot of maintenance, can be left, and also we want them to be useful for the Urban Bee Project, because there are beehives nearby as well. So we want to provide sustenance for the bees. So we're looking at what we can plant in it that will make it slightly easier to maintain, and also, but we want it to be nice as well. We want it to be, and one of the reasons for thinking about lavender was it would also be nice scent for people going past, and to stop maybe just for a moment or two and, you know, brush the lavender and do what we want them to do, and remember people who, as the plaque says, lost too early through their addiction. We were again thinking about awards. Year before last, we were awarded the Royal Caledonian Horticultural Society Community Award. And some of you may know Colin Sterling from Trellis, who's also involved with the Cali, and he came along at the first chance we had to have an open event after lockdown, and that was in March. It was probably May, I think, or April last year, and we had an outside picnic, socially distanced, and were able to receive our certificate, and that's Fraser Hogan, our chief executive there, receiving it on behalf of the group and of ADA. So that was a real feather in our cap for our awards. So we were very pleased at receiving that. Produce, that's one of the main things that we do, growing produce. So as I said at the very beginning, decide at the beginning of the year what we're going to grow, and then as throughout the year, try and have things that, you know, not just harvest at one time of year, but can be harvested throughout the year. The clients get to take away whatever they want. As you can see there, we've got things packaged up. We've got strawberries and we've got beans. I think those are turnips. I'm not quite sure. And there's an ongoing supply of fruit and veg for people to take away. And it's interesting because you'll discover that people maybe don't necessarily like fruit and veg, but they'll still come to the gardening. And we had one chap who came, and I remember one of the first times, Judith telling me one of the first times it was that he wouldn't even eat a strawberry. You know, I mean, it just was not on his radar to eat anything like that. And I'm not saying immediately, but he's been coming for a number of years now, and he's now taking away bags of vegetables to make his own soup. He enjoys it that much, and he now enjoys the fresh produce. And again, people that would come along, they wouldn't eat anything because it had just come out the ground, or the strawberries hadn't been washed or whatever. We've got an outside tap where you can rinse things under, but now they'll just pick the strawberries off the plant and eat them right away. So it's getting that, you know, connection with nature, which is very important for mindfulness and for just getting yourself away from your everyday situations and problems. That's what we hope to do. We like to make sure people feel safe. It's a safe space. They don't need to speak about anything. They certainly don't need to speak about their addictions, because that's not what they're there to do. They're there to garden. And that's something that came up quite recently. Someone said they really enjoyed the group because they didn't have to speak about their problems. There were other problems like, how do we stop the deer eating whatever we've just planted? So they don't have to speak about their addiction problems. You see in the middle there, a very unusual flower. As you know, I don't have a clue what it's called. Maybe someone will be able to tell me. I just thought it was absolutely beautiful. I was up at the polytunnel one day and saw that and just thought it just looks like something somebody's created with, so it just doesn't look natural. It's so beautiful and so intricate. So we do grow flowers from time to time as well. And the other pots there are full of herbs. That's become something that's become very popular, especially for our plant sale. And people enjoy. We've been lucky and we've been able to grow some more unusual herbs. And people are very interested in the different types of herbs that they can get. My favorite one is chocolate mint. I think it's absolutely lovely. So I always buy a pot of that. But there's some definitely unusual ones that they've managed to grow and share. Now, I'm going to share with you a video clip, I hope it works, which was done for us by Aberdeen Council for Voluntary Organisations. We've used it on occasions on our website. We've posted it on Facebook, and it's one of the things that got the most interest on our Facebook site, apparently. And it just talks you through the polytunnel. It interviews Helen, who is one of the volunteers, and some of the clients that were there on that particular day. And you hear from them why they enjoy being there. So I hope you enjoy this short clip.
This is one of the recovery groups for Alcohol and Drugs Action, and it's the gardening group. And we meet weekly, basically. Throughout the whole year we try and meet, and we've got some wonderful facilities here. So the polytunnel for inside work, and we've got 2 outside beds as well, so quite a variety of things. We grow a variety of vegetables and fruit, and we also try and grow some plants to attract the wildlife as well, which helps obviously with our pollination and things, but also is a nice thing to do. And we're always trying unusual things and something a bit different. And then the aim really is that people can do whatever they're comfortable doing and what they enjoy doing, and hopefully go home with something as well. So we try and encourage people to take something to eat at home and ideas on how to cook it and things like that. I enjoy working with other people and helping them and finding what they enjoy doing, and it gives them a regular feature for people to come to. That's why we always try and have it on every week, so that there's that stability to the group. And we've been lucky enough to be funded to do a course on therapeutic gardening as well, which I found really helpful. And the group's been very tolerant of us trying different activities out with them as part of our coursework. So that's been good as well.
good to come up this place. You wasn't like you was being forced into doing work. You could go at your own pace. You could please yourself. But I don't know. I just naturally took it. I quite liked it. Well, there's nothing better than knowing when you're harvesting goods, potatoes, carrots, etc., sweet corn, etc. You know you've did it, and you know there's no chemicals being used. It's all organic. It's all top range. You're here all year, whether it's warm or whether it's cold. There's always work to be done. So I like that. I like a work ethic that's applied to it. I do like building and planning around what we've got to do, what we're planning for the following year. So it's all part. It's beneficial to my recovery, like.
I just like the fact that you meet people and you're out and about and you get just left alone getting to do things. Never dug a hole before, but now I like getting my hands dirty. You know, I like planting trees or planting like strawberries or doing just anything. You know, muck in and do anything, a bit of weeding or anything. And Judith, she's the volunteer, you know, like it looks after a group, but she's really good. She's a nurse full time. She's good, that she does this as well. It's good. I think if she wasn't here, I don't think I would be a group,
Everyone here is really friendly. It's good to get out of the house, socialize, meet new people, be outside on a beautiful day like today. You know, it's rewarding. It's great. I was always interested in gardening, but living in the city, I never really had the opportunity. So I never really had a garden of my own. So heard about this, got recommended it, and decided to come along one week and just stuck to it. I enjoyed, like, obviously planting something from start to finish and watching it grow over time. And then obviously at the end, you get the reward of harvesting it, taking it home and eating it, which is probably my favorite part.
I like the strawberries, picking the strawberries. I like that, because you can eat them as well as picking them.
It's good for your mental health. It's good to get out and meet new people, socialize, keep yourself busy. Especially after the last 18 months we had when everyone's been tied down inside. It's rewarding, you know.
I was never really the gardening type of man, but once I got up to here, yes, I really took to it. Like, it's good. It's really good for your mental health. It helps people. I don't know, like some people might be struggling with things. They can come up here, just get a wee space to themselves, and it can help them break down their problems while they're working away. Things like that.
So I hope you enjoyed that wee film and managed to make out what some of our local folk were saying. Terry loves his strawberries. So I'm wondering if these strawberries ever get to the table when he's picking them. But as you can see, the guys that do it certainly come along, enjoy it. And that was just three. You saw interviewed three of the folk, and you saw someone else that was participating that week as well. So I hope you've enjoyed that little skirt through the Recovery Garden project in Aberdeen. And thank you for listening and taking the time today. And if you have any questions, I think there's going to be some questions allowed and in the chat. So I think what I'll do is I'll stop sharing the screen and then I'll see people's faces and hopefully I'll be able to answer some of your questions.
That's lovely, Anne. Thank you so much for allowing us those insights into the Recovery Garden and the work of Ada. I think there are many questions in the chat, and I think Joan is set up to voice them to you. And one go, Joan.
Okay, Anne, that was great. that was really, really interesting, and it was lovely to see the video. It just brought your presentation to life, so it did, and lovely to hear firsthand from the clients how they benefit from it. And the chap that was so complimentary of Judith, the volunteer, that was so nice of him to commend her so well. And the video's fabulous.
I think it's actually her cakes and what she brings along for coffee that he appreciates most. But you know.
Okay, so yeah, lots of interesting questions. You mentioned that ADA is supported by the Health and Social Care Partnership. Are all your clients referred by those related services, or can potential clients self-refer? Sally was asking that.
Yes, clients can self-refer. Most of our clients come from referrals from the doctor, hospital, you know, GPs, things like that. But we do have people that just come along and are looking for the service, and they'll maybe look for it online and then get in touch. We have a helpline which people phone, can phone, and they're encouraged then from the helpline if they're wanting, you know, one-to-one to come along. And we have someone that can see them initially, called a duty worker, and then they go on a waiting list, which isn't too long, to see an individual worker themselves. And it's usually a program of, it can be anything, start, you know, minimum of 6 weeks, or for as long as the person requires the support.
Okay, so that kind of answers what was going to be my next question. Jenny was asking, how long do people come for? Is it for a few weeks or a month or several months? So people, can you clarify, if people come, do they make is there a program developed for that individual, and what happens when they come to the end of that program? Are they allowed to stay, or can they move on to another project like the Bee project?
Oh, well, the gardening project is just a part of ADA's work. So if someone was referred as a client, they would receive a worker, depending on what, you know, their issue is. And as part of that, the worker may say to them, you know, you might enjoy going and doing some, would you fancy going and doing some gardening? So then they would come along to the gardening project. And once they've come along to the gardening project, they can stay for as long as they like, even if they're discharged by their, I mean, Terry, the chap, the red, the football jumper, he's no longer a existing client, but he still comes along to the gardening group. So, you know, he's been coming to the gardening group for years now. And I think possibly Graham's the same. So it's a progression. They can stay with the gardening group for as long as they want. There's no limits.
That's lovely. That's really nice.
What we would really like,
you know,
what we would really like to see is them progressing on, and as you say, some of them have gone on to the Bee project, or progressing on to becoming actual volunteers themselves, and then working with others. And I know that Terry and Graham have both helped out recently with another drug and alcohol related project in the city, which is, you know, for people that are on the street. And they've been helping with this group to provide food for, you know, and things like that. So it's a progression in their recovery, but they're also they've still got a foot in the door if they need it.
Which is good, which is a great support in itself. Is the garden a drop-in service, or is it only open at scheduled times when one of the volunteers are there to manage it? Yeah,
it's only open, we only run on a Wednesday morning between 10 o'clock and 1. Because it's on council premises, we have to have a restricted time there. Now, we do organise other things at other times, but that's the main timing, is a restricted time, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned the council there. Do you have a long-term lease agreement in place? How does that work for the future of the project?
Well, no, we don't. It's just the council have said that they'll continue this community initiative project. So as long as they're able to provide us with the tunnel, then we'll be there. I don't know what would happen if they were to say, you know, they couldn't we could no longer use it. I think at the moment there's a couple of other projects use tunnels at the site, so don't think the plug's going to be pulled. But I think what we would do is we would try and find funding and something to maybe try and get an allotment or an alternative to keep the project going.
Okay.
In some way or other.
Okay. Do you have any evaluation? Do you use any target setting or evaluation for the garden project? The worker that suggests that the client comes along to the garden, do they use the garden for any evaluation in their recovery?
I'm not that I'm aware of. We don't have those sorts of targets for the gardening group. Obviously, hopefully, clients that come along, their worker will see a marked improvement in their maybe their social skills, or coming out their shell a wee bit, becoming more involved. But there's no, we don't have that sort of
formal arrangement.
No.
Okay, yeah, that's lovely. Are there any occupational therapists involved with Ada and the service users?
No, we don't, funnily enough, but I was privileged to listen in on your talk from the lady in, I think it was Brazil, the other recovery project at the beginning of the week. And I actually wrote down, what's one of the things I wrote down in my book was because I think it was her mentioned occupational therapists. Somebody, and it was either her or the lady from Tuscany. And I thought to myself, now there's a target area for possible students. We get a lot of students applying to us to be volunteers because they want to, they're possibly interested in addiction, issues which they want to, that's how they want to progress their career. But I was actually thinking, if an occupation, we might actually sort of target maybe some occupational therapy students to see if they would be interested in coming along to help and volunteer, or just even to come along as part of their course, and support, and we could benefit from from them as well. So that was something that I thought, no, I hadn't actually thought of that before. And I thought, no, that's, I'm going to, because we do go to RGU and we have, pharmacy students that want to come along and things like that. So I think possibly occupational therapist would be a good one to target.
Well, you've got your first client, not client, you've got your first student volunteering. We've got Ellie who's saying we'll hook you up, Ellie. Ellie is a current third year student and would be really interested in seeing the garden.
Perfect.
We'll get her to come. We'll hook you up. Fabulous. So that's lovely.
Just my email address was on the last slide. If she didn't catch it, just give her my email address.
Okay. That's great. Question here. Is it communal gardening? This is all the gardening growing that takes place. I'm sure you said at the beginning of the year, you collectively, the clients and the volunteers, plan what they're going to grow for the year ahead. Now, is everything all grown? Everybody shares the growing, or do individuals have their own little growing area that they can call their own?
It can be a combination of both. We usually plant a lot of stuff that's everybody can use and access, and but then occasionally you'll get one or two clients. We did have a chap that came a couple of years and he wanted just a wee square for himself to try some more unusual veg or things like that. So that was fine, yeah.
Great, okay. It all sounds perfect. So I need to ask this question now. Have there been any particular challenges in running the group?
There's always challenges in running any group through alcohol and with people with substance misuse issues. Some weeks we'll have a full crowd turn up, other weeks there'll be nobody. During the summertime, until the council very kindly installed watering sprinklers, the first couple of years we had to make sure there was someone there in the summer every day, either to put the sides of the tunnel up or down, and that did become problematic because sometimes people aren't as reliable as, you know, they're well-intentioned, but if they're not in the greatest of places and they don't turn up, and then things can happen, you know, that so there's those sort of problems. It's not the most accessible site, unfortunately, so we are limited to people that are reasonably physically active to get to it. Other than that, I'm trying to think of any other. That's really the only issues I think that crop up from time to time, but we can usually get around them.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And we also, I think I'm going to just scan for some more questions and anyone putting their hands up, but Kate and Karen both made suggestions for your planter, the remembrance planter. We'll share this with you, and don't worry about writing down the names, we'll get this to you. Sea holly varieties do well in drought conditions and are good for the bees also, and jaggy enough that they might deter from any vandalism. And Karen suggested rosemary, which is a plant of remembrance. It's a really hardy to do thing, and bees love the flowers as well. So we'll get those names to you, don't you worry about writing them down.
Please.
Don't worry.
That's why I like listening
okay,
to Gardener's Question Time, because they always put they say everything's available on their website. I can never pick the things up.
Yeah, we'll get that. So Anne's email address has been put in the chat if anybody would like to contact her directly. I think I've covered all the questions in the chat, unless Joe or Fiona want to point out to me that I haven't. And if anybody's else got anything else to say, please pop your hand up in the reactions and we'll try and find you. I'll go to gallery view and I'll be able to see everybody. Any more questions or even comments? If anybody wants to just unmute themselves and speak directly with Anne, I'm sure she would welcome the chat. I've got a question, Anne, but I don't know if you'll be able to answer it, because I know you did tell me that gardening's not your first strength. But I wonder if you've maybe picked up from the clients or Judith, do you have a top tip for organic pest control? Have you heard them, what their secret ingredient is?
No, all I can relate in that is a very funny story. I was up at the polytunnel one day, I think it was last year, the year before, and all of a sudden, Helen, who was speaking in that clip that you saw, came out past me with something in her hand and flung it. And I mean, you know, she'd make a good shot putter. And she says, well, that's one less wee pest. It had been obviously a mouse that had been at the sweet corn. So they had set some traps. But the interesting and the amazing thing was, as she threw this thing through the air, this huge big bird, and it must have been, I would say it was a hawk of some sort, just swooped down, took it off with it. So somebody got a nice lunch.
Yeah.
But that's Helen's pest control.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a very organic method of pest control, and one that we'll maybe not write about, but good to know about it.
I tell you one thing, there is one thing that I do remember, and you folk that are gardeners will know better than me. We used something a couple of years ago that was to do with seaweed.
Okay.
Some formula, something that you can, not actual seaweed, well, maybe it was actual seaweed, but you can buy it, but it's seaweed based. And it was very, very good. I mean, apparently it was spread it over the stuff that they planted, and it was excellent. And it's they really said how much it had helped. So those of you that know more than me would probably know exactly what that was, but it was seaweed based anyway, as far as I remember.
Yeah, Sally just popped in the chat, maxi crop seaweed feed. So yeah, seaweed is a good source of nutrients, and a nice drip feed source as well. And possibly the bugs don't like it. I'm not so sure. Anytime I've used real seaweed, I always thought they attracted bugs. Fiona, have you used seaweed? Fiona Thackeray, that's too.
Yeah, my understanding is there's some data showing it really strengthens plant immunity. So pests may be there, but they don't have such a devastating effect. Pests, including, you know, fungi as well as bugs. So I think that's how it works. But it may also have a pesticide effect. I'm not sure, or a pest repellent effect. Yeah, Sally's got more comments to add.
Okay, yeah, on you go. SB plant invigorator, good for greenfly and organic. Yeah, there's more and more organic products coming onto the market, which is good to see, and much more accessible and slightly more cost effective, well, not competitively cost wise also. Fabulous. Okay, moving swiftly on from attacking hawks. Anybody else got any questions? Comments? Jenny, I think I'll hand back over to you. Thank you so much, Anne, for taking that time to answer my interrogation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joan, and thank you very much to Anne McAlister. That's fantastic. Please show your appreciation to Anne by clicking on your reactions buttons, or please unmute and give a round of applause. That would be brilliant. Thank you very much, Anne. Great, thank you. So, thanks to everyone who's been here today. You may have already donated to Trellis, but if you have enjoyed today's session, please consider making a donation to Ada or indeed to Trellis to support future work. You may be interested in our plastic-free gardening book, which is on offer during the seminar series for £10, and all proceeds go to Trellis. It's time to bring this session to a close, and I'm going to hand over to Fiona Thackeray, Trellis Development Manager, to bring the seminar series to a close. Fiona.
Thank you, Jenny. This was the 12th seminar of our second annual series, and it's been quite an adventure. Initially, we conceived of this online way of meeting while COVID was rampant among us all around the world, as an alternative to our annual conference, which we had to cancel just at the start of the very first lockdown. It used to gather over 150 people here near Perth. And so an online event seemed, to me at least, somehow a bit inferior. The rest of the team were more enthusiastic, I'd like to point out. But how quickly I changed my mind. The chance to learn from so many people with a common aim from around the world and across the UK is invaluable. And it would have seemed impossible to us before we were pushed to find a way to do this by the virus restrictions. We've been inspired and moved and prompted to think in new ways countless times during these events. And actually, we couldn't afford to bring everyone together here in Scotland, much as we'd like to actually meet you all in person. So it's been especially exciting to be able to bring in so many perspectives and so many wonderful people with all their learning and bring them together. And even though it's only virtually, we can connect them with you in your garden shed or your office or your home environment in a single week. And I know that some of you have been to one event and some of you have been to every single one, and some are going to pick up a few on YouTube afterwards. But we feel like we've made a lot of new friends, and we've really enjoyed the chance to meet up with old friends that maybe we met last year at the event then, or through just being part of this network and this movement of therapeutic gardening. Your comments and questions through the week have been incredibly encouraging and stimulating, both in the surveys, although we've not had a chance to really look at those yet, and by text and email and WhatsApp messages. There have been so many good ideas emerging, also in the chat and the discussions like the one we've just had, and we're going to get together, the staff team and the board, to consider them and imagine what we might be able to do as a result. Because as the lockdown years have shown us, anything is possible. We don't have to do things the old way. If none of you had liked the idea of our seminar series and decided to book and give up your time to join us, this idea of an online seminar series would have been dead in the water, of course. You are a part of its success, and we're really grateful to you for being part of it. It feels like it's kind of shortened the distance between us and reduced some of the isolation that everyone was subject to during the worst of the COVID crisis. The speakers have all given their time and energy freely, and they've been articulate and fascinating and thought-provoking. We're thankful to all of you, and we really hope you'll stay in touch. Thanks.